Okay.
These things just ain't working.
Internet lag and technical problems. But apparently we've been live for 8 seconds already.
Oh, okay. When we say 8 minutes, I'll be like, whoops. Oh, I'm canceled.
Hey, look, we're here. Hey, my name is Raymond. You're watching RPadTV 3000. And today I'm hanging out with the greatest man that ever lived, the vascular vegetarian. How many other nicknames do you have?
I don't know. I don't even know if any of them apply anymore. Asshole, I think, is the only one that we can.
No way. Well, I'm here with Austin Aries, excellent pro wrestler, author, and all around cool guy. And just to clear this up, we know each other on a social level, so I don't want anyone to think this is some hard hitting journalistic interview. I'm just happy to hang out with my friend. So
yeah, man, it's good to see you, dude. Yeah, we're have a glass of wine. We just catch up and.
Well, I'm still on coffee, so cheers.
Okay, well, it's a little earlier there, so that's not too bad. Was it 6 o'clock there?
Yes, it is. Speaking of which, we used to both live in the Las Vegas area, and now you don't. You left Las Vegas about, what was it, like a year and a half ago?
Yeah, right at the end of 2020, like December 2020, January 2021. Yeah, sold my house and got out. Yeah.
What made you choose to leave Las Vegas? I mean, there are reasons to, but what are yours? What were yours?
Yeah, well, I think that I moved to Las Vegas it was kind of an emotional decision where, some things had happened in my personal life and professional life when I was here in Florida that I felt like I just had to kind of get away. And so I had some friends out in the Vegas area, and it seemed like a good move at the time. But then I bought a house there, and that proved to be not such a good move. It was a nice house. It was 70 years old. It was large. I ended up moving in there myself. Yeah, it was a cool spot, but it definitely needed more people in it than just me. And it also needed a lot of fixing up that I'm not super handy. So I loved the place, but I just realized as the whole COVID narrative started to unfold, and the world shut down, and obviously Vegas being a big tourist place, driven on tourism, my profession being very much live events, I felt like I was kind of a sitting duck in the middle of this desert with no natural resources and a large mortgage payment. And also, as we were talking a little bit before we hopped on here, difficult maybe to meet the kind of people that I wanted to really associate myself with on a day-to-day basis. I had a lot of growing pains and a lot of shit. My house was burglarized. I had a bad business deal go sideways. I had a guy flake out on me that I let move in with me. Just a bunch of shit happened to where I just kind of got this feeling like, I don't think Vegas is where I'm supposed to be. So the opportunity.
For people not familiar with the locals here, there are a lot of grifters, and
it's a very transient town. A lot of people coming in, coming out, and grifters is a good term. And I just felt like with everything happening in the world, I was like, I want to get somewhere where I don't have to get hammered over the head daily with this kind of, this virus. And it's just, I don't know. And so I had friends that had been down in Mexico from different parts of the world, and it seemed like there was a bit of normalcy down there, and a little more sense of freedom. And so, I went down there January of 21 and spent the whole year down there. I was in Tulum for like 4 months, and then I ended up in Playa del Carmen for the rest of the year, and really enjoyed it, man. I was really focused on, I think one thing, no matter what you believe about the pandemic, is it showed us how quickly things can change and how quickly things can be taken out of our control. And so I really focused on just enjoying the present day, the day in front of me, not worrying about 6 months or a year or 5 years down the road, because it's so hard to project what that might look like. We see how quickly things can change. So I just went down there and really enjoyed my day-to-day life and being, close to the beach and walking everywhere and going to the fruit stand and meeting a lot of like-minded people down there that have been fleeing their respective countries, whether it was Australia or Canada, and just trying to get out of those places and while they could, and ended up really enjoying it down there, so.
It looked like it. I mean, just from your pictures, the stuff you wrote on your socials, it looked like you were much more at peace than I've seen you in the last couple of years.
Yeah, this is true. And I think stepping away from wrestling for a year helped that too, to just kind of take myself out of that bubble. And it had been really become my identity for most of my adult life. And sort of kind of take a step back from that and rediscover myself, independent of the Austin Aries character or the pro wrestler, and meet a bunch of people that had no idea that that's what I did or didn't really care about that too much, and just focus on like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but man, if I can get up today and go get a nice workout in and go eat some fresh fruit and go to the beach and listen to some music and hang out with some good people, that's a good
hell of a day.
And string as many of those together as I can, and so that was basically the mantra of the last year. And and now back up here in Florida, just trying to figure out, what the next move is, from a business standpoint, and then also, where that's going to take me as far as putting some roots down, not too deep of roots, not too thick of roots, but somewhere to call home.
Right. So we have your buddy Sam saying hi to both of us. Sam Blair.
Sam.
We got somebody who said the real reason that you left Las Vegas was to get away from me. Aha.
No, not true. You know why? You know why? Because every time you came over to my place, you never came empty-handed. You always had a gift to for the bar or for the like that's. Yeah. Those are the things you want to hang out with. Some of the guys who came over to drink all my liquor, you came over to supply it sometimes. Those are the guests you want to have.
Well, speaking of which, it's a great transition. I love how this works out. One of the things that I had for the first time at your place was the hot Italian sausage from Beyond. And it's one of my favorite things now. And you're really big into promoting vegetarianism, being vegan. Can you give the people out there some recommendations of some food that you enjoy that you think they'd like?
Man, it's weird. My palate has changed as I've gone more into the plant-based lifestyle and veganism. It's always evolving. And so, I've even gotten away from a lot of the processed, vegan meats, faux meats, as I've tried, and especially when I was down in Mexico, a lot of that stuff wasn't down there, or if it was very expensive. So I started eating a lot more natural foods, a lot of fruits, and just beans and rice and lentils and kind of more basic whole foods. But yeah, like, today I splurged and I went out to a place here called Ethos Vegan Kitchen, and I call it like vegan junk food. And I had a calzone, and it had the vegan Italian sausage and, vegan ricotta cheese. And it certainly wasn't good for me, but it tasted good. So, I like to make a lot of smoothies, with frozen fruits and bananas and things like that.
Speaking of which, apparently you make a killer apple pie smoothie, according to
man. Yeah, man. And it's really not that hard, using some apples and some oats and some cinnamon and maybe some dates if you want a little extra sweetness. And your favorite, I use water or cashew milk or something like that, and blend that sucker up, and you're good to go. But yeah, I like to make. I'll tell you what. One thing I do like for people that maybe are kind of curious or transitioning. I like lentil pasta or chickpea pasta, so I find that to be more nutritious than wheat pasta. It's also gluten-free, which is nice. Has more protein in it. But then I make a good cashew cheese, and it's just like soaked cashews, nutritional yeast, and some apple cider vinegar, and then you can put some turmeric and some spices in there, onion powder, things like that. But again, these are recipes you can find online. I'm not some genius. I usually just do a good search online and find some recipes and then just kind of alter them for myself. But a good lentil mac and cheese is always a nice comfort food, and considerably healthier than the alternative of say Kraft or whatever.
Excellent. I do want to try your apple pie smoothie one day. I'm glad Sam brought that to my attention.
Yeah, man, it's really good. Like it's again, I have a Vitamix and I've had one now for 10 years and use it almost daily. And I think, a really high quality, high speed blender is really super important because we can, calories are one thing, but nutrients are another. And I think for a lot of us here in the States that kind of eat the standard American diet, it's very calorie dense and nutrition deficient. And
Right.
so one way we can pack more nutrition into our diet is through these smoothies where we can put a lot of these good fruits. We can put whole grains like like an organic oat. I use hemp seeds a lot, which gives me healthy fats and protein. I'll throw some frozen spinach or greens in there that you don't have to necessarily eat. You don't taste it. But it's a way to pack a bunch of that stuff into one drink where to try to eat all that food might be difficult. But you pack all that goodness in one smoothie and, have that for breakfast. And now you kind of start your day off flooding your body with nutrients and vitamins and minerals. So that way, if you want to splurge later in the day and have a calzone, you're good to go.
Cashew cheese calzone.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So some people might not know this about you, but you are a big baseball fan. You played a ton of baseball as a kid and growing up. And today there was big news in baseball. The labor,
the multimillionaires finally cut a deal.
there will be a full 162 game season, but I don't know, just like labor disputes, and that always leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I'm definitely not as big of a baseball fan as I was, when I was younger because of stuff like this, mostly because of the owners. I wanted to see how your feelings about baseball have changed. Do you like it as much as you used to?
So I guess, when it comes to the labor disputes, I see both sides because I'm in an industry where there is no players association. There is no protection for the athletes. So when you start looking at the profit sharing in professional wrestling, it pales in comparison to any major sport. You look at the amount of money that WWE, for example, generates, and then you look at the salaries of the performers. It's nothing like Major League Baseball or these other professional sports, and that's in part because we don't have anyone to go to bat for us. We're left to fend for ourselves. So I do understand it from a business standpoint of these players just wanting, these teams are going up in value. Basketball, football, baseball. So these guys are buying teams from a business standpoint. They're seeing that appreciate at a great number. You're getting record, contracts from TV contracts, generating revenue, creating new revenue sources. And so I understand why there is these things, and I can appreciate that that's kind of part of the business aspect. It's hard for me to relate to the owners, and just in general, that mindset. But I think it's one thing I'd kind of remind people when we even start talking about the way of the world or politics or how the world works. People are wired differently. And, I believe that most people that end up being the upper echelon of the top 0.5%, it's because they're wired to be that way. Again, when I had my nice, 3,500 square foot house in Las Vegas, I was happy to be there, and I wasn't trying to figure out how to then buy my neighbor's house across the street, eventually own the whole neighborhood and take over Vegas. Sociopaths, as we've known in the history of time, that have been trying to rule places, to been kings or rulers, are wired differently than the vast majority of human beings. And so they lack this conscience. They lack this, they think they're always just in what they're trying to do, and they don't really have remorse or a conscience for it. And so, I think that a lot of times, the owners, so to speak, they find themselves in the position because they're wired that way. So, does it leave a bad taste in your mouth sometimes? Sure. But I also understand the reasoning behind it, and it's something I can't identify with. So ultimately I try to just detach from that and go, hey, I'm a fan of sports. Sports is just is an entertainment tool to keep people somewhat distracted and to also continue to keep us divided, and that trickles over into everything else, whether it's politics or pro wrestling or the movies. I've definitely had a shift in my philosophy when it comes to how I view these things, just in general, as I've gotten older.
As you should. I mean, we all hopefully are learning and evolving and getting better.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like there's nothing wrong with entertainment, right? We all need something to check out and just mindlessly enjoy something. But I've started to see like the overall sector of entertainment a little differently, and how it ties into the overall picture of the world, the matrix, as I like to call it, that we all live in.
I mean, the way I've been looking at it, I'm in these situations, I'm almost always on the player's side or the talent side, because these guys have a very short amount of time to make that kind of money.
Sure.
Where most of these owners have generational wealth,
Yes.
and their families will be set, barring any disasters for the rest of time.
Yeah.
And it really bugs me when owners plead poverty, like, oh, it's, our TV deal wasn't as good, we're not making as much money.
We're seeing that not in baseball, we're seeing that across the board in the corporate structure. It's like right now, gas prices. We have all these companies that are blaming they're having to raise their product prices because of inflation, yet they're still showing record profits.
Yes.
What, $38 billion the gas industry showed in profits, and yet they're having to raise the prices of gas. That to me is the ultimate problem with capitalism, is that it's rooted in greed, and nothing's ever enough. Nothing's ever good enough. Every quarter we must show profit. And the way to do that is continue to take from the bottom. It's never to take from the top. The CEO doesn't want to give up one of his jets, but we're gonna take it from the people on the bottom. And to me, that's the system's broken in that way. And again, it comes to how people are wired. And some people are wired to be greedy, and enough is never enough. I read somewhere, or someone had commented on this concept, that what if we just said that we outlawed billionaires and said that once you have $999 million, you won the game. You go to the winner's circle, but we cap it at $999 million, and anything above that goes into the community pool for everyone else to raise the rest of the boats on the tide. It's an interesting concept, right? Because I think everybody could live a good life, and so could their grandkids if they had $999 million.
Absolutely.
But we would say, hey, like, you only get to be greedy to a certain point, and then you won the game. It's like you won, that you're good. And we could have a whole world of 999 millionaires, instead of a couple handful of billionaires.
See, another thing for the billionaires that you're speaking of, one good thing is that they're kind of fooling the people. At least a lot of what I've been seeing on social media, there's a lot of people like, well, gas is expensive, this is Biden's fault. But there are reasons to dislike Biden. Gasoline prices, that's not one of them. The federal government has so little to do with gasoline prices.
Yeah, I've seen myself labeled as a mega Trump supporter because I've been critical of
war.
Yeah, I mean, it was news to me, right? It's funny because we dumb people down to a very simplistic viewpoint, that if you disagree with this side's policies or agenda, then you automatically must mean you support the other sides. And like I think of myself as apolitical from a standpoint of, I look at politics like pro wrestling. It's two guys that are playing a role, pretending to fight each other. But when the show is done and they go to the back, they're paid by the same entities. And these are the multinational corporations that literally own the government. So, when you criticize Biden, it has nothing to do with Trump. And I didn't really care for Trump in office either. I didn't like his divisive rhetoric. I thought he was put in there to play the heel, to make people emotionally angry, to manipulate people emotionally, to not think with logic or reason, but to just think emotional standpoint. And he really destroyed truth. Anything that was brought to him that challenged him, he just called fake news and dismiss it. And we've seen that now mindset translate to all of culture when it comes to any topic, whether it's COVID, whether it's politics, whether it's the war right now that's happening. Is if you're presented with something that challenges your mindset, you just dismiss it as fake and you move on without actually trying to really, contemplated or potentially learn something. And so we're not able to have any type of, discourse right now, it seems, with anybody who doesn't, isn't in our echo chamber. People,
Yeah.
and which is, I had dinner last night with a friend of mine, and we have some different views on the overall COVID situation. He's in healthcare, so he's seen it up hand, close and personal. I have some different, personal relationships and things with it, but we were able to talk about it without insulting each other or dropping, simple, labels on each other, and that's what's really missing, because I've changed my views on so many things in my lifetime. I've ran the full spectrum of things like politics or religion or eating or just the way the world is. And if I was always going to sit in my echo chamber and never allow anybody to challenge me, how would I have ever changed my opinions on things? How would I have ever grown? And I see this now, and things aren't black and white. Things, you can't just color everybody red or blue.
Right. There's nuance.
It's nuance. And also, like, when you step back and you do realize, like, in my opinion, like, that's theater. It's meant to, listen, government in its current form is meant to take your money, right? Divide the people and control you.
Right.
That's it. And a lot of people don't realize, because they're so blinded by their politics, how hypocritical they are in a lot of their stances. And I will use the COVID as an example. And my stance on that, quite simply, is I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm a pro-choicer. I believe in people should have the choice to have informed decision to do what's best for them or their family. And what's best for them or their family isn't necessarily best for anybody else. And they shouldn't demonize, coerce, force anybody else to have to take their point of view.
Right.
It's funny that the political party that's pro-choice, when it comes to things like abortion, now when it comes to the vaccine, wants to take pro-choice off the table. Well, this is different. And I said, but it's not different. It's really not different. And it's different because the television station that you watch told you it's different, because the politician that you back told you it's different. But if you were to step out of your politics and look from a macro instead of a micro point of view, you'd see it's really not. But they have a lot of people, or again, freedom and patriotism. If you say that as an American, gets kind of thumb their nose at from a certain political party, or if you're Ukrainian, they think it's the greatest thing in the world right now. And I'm trying to wrap my head around how people can have these very conflicting views and not realize, in a lot of ways, how they're being very hypocritical.
See, and that brings back the word nuance. I think when it comes to the vaccine, you and I don't have opinions that are dissimilar, but if people spoke to us just the way it's worded, I believe you and I obviously are very different in terms of health. I mean, you're in great shape. You're an athlete.
I saw what you cooked the other night on your double cheeseburger. It's like, all right. I won't comment on that.
You're absolutely right, and I appreciate when you call me out on stuff like that. I really do. I really do.
Listen, bro, and this is the other thing I say about this. And this was where the conversation I had with my buddy last night, because he's like, well, some people aren't of good health, I said, but a lot of that's their own choice, right? Mm-hmm. Majority of people have these, that's how they decide to live their life. It's not my job to tell you how you should live your life or you need to be healthy, but it's also not my job to care more about your health than you care for your own. So to ask you to protect you when you're not doing things to protect yourself, I don't think is fair. And again, I don't try to preach to anybody how they should live your life, but I should be told I have to live my life a certain way to protect those people who aren't doing those things for themselves. And again, like, if you say something like that, you get labeled a bunch of things, and again, nuance is taken out, and we're just going to slap a label on you, and you're a horrible person. You don't care about anybody. You're trying to kill everyone. Okay, that's not what it is, man.
Like, I think as a recent example, Joe Rogan got a ton of heat for some of his opinions on COVID and vaccine. And part of it, in my mind, I'm like, he's done his own research. He has his own doctors. Sure. He's a healthy guy. he can make his own decision.
Aaron
about his
Rodgers,
health.
Aaron Rodgers in the same boat, and
I have a little bit more of a problem with him.
well,
he was a little more arrogant, calling himself a critical thinker, and he did try to swerve the press about saying, I've been immunized.
I understand that. I also have, because I do have. It's funny. So Aaron actually DM'd me on Twitter, and I'm not going to get into the conversation in general, but and I know some people that work in the sports field in Milwaukee who have direct contact. So understand first of all that what he was being put through as a non-vaccinated, and again the league knew that he wasn't vaccinated. He had been going through some alternate protocols through his doctor's studies, some more holistic things to immunize himself, right? So he wasn't necessarily he was being misleading in a way, but also I think that, he didn't want to be the poster child for this, so he wasn't trying to be controversial when he was asked. He was trying to answer it with some truth, but also not get into it, right? He wasn't trying to deceive necessarily, but he also wasn't trying to he didn't want to talk about it. But understand, this dude was getting up at 5 a.m. every day to be tested because he wasn't, when other guys didn't have to show up until 10 o'clock. Every day, this guy was jumping through hoops and going through all these ridiculous protocols that, from a logical standpoint, made no sense to adhere to what they wanted him to adhere to because he didn't go through with their form of vaccination. And the funny thing is, when it was all said and done, when he contracted COVID, it wasn't from an unvaccinated player; it was from being around vaccinated players.
Right.
And so I think that but again, here's a guy, and a lot of the criticism was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to take health advice from Aaron Rodgers, a football player." And my thought was, this guy has so much money that I would say that the resources he's able to go to and the doctors he's able to talk to far outweighs any dude sitting on their phone or fan that bitches about this. You're going to your general practitioner who, I'm sorry, is being paid to take a certain position more often than not. Their hospitals are being paid to take a certain position when it comes down to this because they're being lobbied or they're being given money through these institutions to take a position where the people that he's going to with his resources are probably way out of most people's comprehension. So I do maybe want to listen to a guy like Joe Rogan, because he's not saying it's my opinion. He's saying from the people that I was able to hire to give me all the facts, this is what I came down to. And I don't know, so to simplify and go, oh, these are dumb journalists or a dumb commentator, it wasn't their opinion. There's a lot of healthcare professionals and scientists and immunologists that had a different opinion than that was being toted out in the mainstream media. But a lot of them were being silenced, and a lot of them being told not to share that opinion, And so it's always, again, you got to pull away from your politics and look at a bigger picture globally of what's happening. And again, at the end of the day, if it worked for Joe or it worked for Aaron, why are you threatened by it? You do what you think works for you. If you believe this works, if you believe the vaccines work, then you shouldn't be worried about what anybody else does, And
right. To be fair, I don't think Joe Rogan was telling anyone you should do what I did.
He never did.
He never did.
What I did for me, and it worked.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people that have used ivermectin and had great success in other countries. In other countries, this was part of the packet they were handing out for preventative measures, so people didn't get COVID, right? So, but because, again, if you spend your day listening and watching the Idiot Box, right, and you're on your phone all day, and you're on these platforms that are very skewed towards one point of view only, and any other point of view shared on there is fact checked by the people that are paid to fact check one side of the narrative, then you're going to believe all these things. And when a guy like Joe Rogan comes out and says something to the contrary, it threatens you, because now it makes you have to look at all your mindset and all your decisions and go, it challenges it, right? It challenges everything you think you believe. And then it challenges who you're listening to and why do I trust them? I always come down to this. A lot of the difference of opinion simply comes down to who you listen to, who you trust, and why. Because most of us don't know, right? We really don't know, right? We're listening to people, we're reading articles, we're doing our own due diligence, whatever it might be, but we really don't know. And I think we found out, like, even a lot of doctors don't know, because they're just in the textbooks they wrote, or they read, that somebody wrote that said, this is your curriculum and this is what health is going to be. And this, so a lot of us are taking educated guesses, and it just comes down to, well, who do you listen to? Who do you trust? And then the big is, why do you trust that opinion? Why do you trust that information? And so the one thing I do know is that for the vast majority of my life, my government, or a lot of these agencies and officials, have been lying to me. And that I do know, right? So they haven't earned my trust, and I am very skeptical. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It doesn't make you a bad person to be skeptical.
No, in fact, one of my favorite things about you is your need to ask why. You're very inquisitive. You're very thoughtful. I'm not saying this to kiss your ass. This is something that I think we have this in common. I think you take it to an extent that I don't. And where does that come from? Your need to know, your need to ask why, even to the point where it doesn't, asking why might not be the best thing for you.
Yeah, it certainly hasn't helped me in my profession, especially in the more corporate settings. Most corporate settings want yes sirs, not why sirs.
Yes.
Why sirs are a pain in the ass. Why sirs are hard to work with, right? Because they don't want to have to necessarily give you the answer, because a lot of times they don't have the answer. Their answer is because someone told me to tell you that, right? And it's just everyone's in a chain of command. I'm not sure where it came from. I think I've just always am an overthinker and an overanalyzer of myself and of everything around me. But I always look at it, and I think some people think that you ask why to challenge. It's not always to challenge a position, but sometimes it's to understand why that is the position, or why that is what's asked of you. So you learn, right? Because I might have a different opinion, but I'm never afraid to be wrong. I don't mind to be wrong, because that means that I learned something. But I'll never find out, and I'll never learn if I don't ask why. If I just do things because I'm told, I don't really learn anything. And then I feel like I'm just kind of being led through life without a real full understanding of what I'm doing, or why am I driving the car in the way I'm driving it, just because somebody told me to, or I'm just in the passenger seat my whole life, and I let somebody else drive it for me and never ask them where we're going or why we're going there. I don't know. It's just the way I'm wired. And do
you think it comes from your need? You mentioned learning. One of the things that I got from my dad was that, I should always strive to learn something every day. It doesn't have to be profound. It could be a little thing. Maybe your reason why you ask why so much is because you're driven to learn.
Could be driven to learn, or just because a lot of the stuff that I see around me doesn't make sense. Just the way the world works, the way what this whole construct put before us doesn't really resonate with me. It doesn't. Again, I was saying, a lot of us are going to wake up, tomorrow, and we're going to look in the mirror and be completely comfortable and have more food than we could possibly need in our fridge, have more clothes than we could ever wear, and yet down the street, or, a lot of places around the world, there's people who have nothing, that are struggling just to survive, that are struggling just to eat. And we've been taught that that's okay. We've been taught that that's just how life is. And, unless the television tells us to be offended, we don't get offended, And so, there's a lot of things that as I grew up didn't make sense. So if things don't make sense to you, the first question is, well, why do we do it like that? Why is that okay? Why is that allowed? Why is that accepted? And the more, I think here's some of my early days where I remember this was in Sunday school. And as they were teaching me, I was in Catholic, I grew up Catholic, and the stories they were telling me and the things I needed to do didn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
As a 10-year-old. And so I asked a lot of why questions, and they didn't like that, you're just it's what the book says. It's what, it's just how it is. It's why, what doesn't explain this to me. And so the more you ask why, and you realize that people don't have a good answer, the more I want to ask more questions of why, because then I realize, maybe there is no good answer. Maybe that's not how it's supposed to be, but everyone just accepts it because nobody else wants to ask why. They just say yes, And so, but that's kind of what's brought me to this place where I have a very different view of what the human experience is supposed to be, as opposed to what it's been set up for it to be.
Right.
So a lot of the things that we go through in life is all set to divide us, to disconnect us from, the true human experience. And we're all interconnected. We're all energy. Love is the ultimate highest vibrational state we can be in. The energy of the earth, the energy of every living being, all connected. And yet everything that it's used by design is to disconnect us from that, whether it's something as simple as rubber soles on our shoes to disconnect us from recharging from Earth's energy, grounding ourselves, to, again, sports entertainment divides us by our respective teams, politics divides us by our color, race, money, all these things, it's divide to make us all feel like we're separate and we're not all connected. We're not all the same. But when you strip all those constructs away that have been man-made and created, we really are all the same. Like in our core, we really seek very, very similar basic human instincts, and it's love, right? Survival, love, that camaraderie. I mean, and so going to Mexico and doing some plant ceremonies and exploring more of some of these things really, I said the veil kind of fell completely, of what's in front of me and how silly we're all being, holding a lot of these things to be the ultimate truth and make it so important in our day-to-day life. When we all die and we all transcend to the next experience, we're going to realize that this was a test and most of us failed it, and we missed the point,
I hope that, you mentioned going to Mexico lifted a veil for you. I think that travel is such a valuable teacher. And a lot of Americans never travel, either because of the cost or even the desire. Isn't something like half the country doesn't have passports, something like that?
Well, they'll have their digital passports soon enough, so everyone will have those.
But for me, I'm spending time in the Philippines and Thailand and seeing like real poverty, but also seeing how happy, genuinely happy a lot of these really poor people are.
Exactly.
Just they appreciate what they have. They appreciate the bonds they have with each other. And that's so much more meaningful than some of the shit that I worry about on a daily basis. And I try to keep perspective and appreciate the simple things.
Absolutely. I say, I've always said the greatest thing that professional wrestling provided me, wasn't a blue check mark or, money, but it was the ability to travel.
Yeah.
Because, growing up where I grew up, there's a good chance that I probably never would have done much traveling. It wasn't part of the family I grew up in, from a financial standpoint, it does cost money to do that. Right. But once I started traveling, I started to really realize that despite what the history books tell me or the television tells me or the started to tell me, that we're all kind of the same. We have some different life experiences depending on where we grew up, but we're all seeking the same things, and that, these people in Japan, I bet you their history books read a little different than our history books when it comes to the good guys and the bad guys, where you go to Mexico. And one thing I told my dad, he loves to watch his Fox News, and that's cool. It's his entertainment. I remind him of that. It's just entertainment, and it's not true. Right. But I said, I'll tell you what, Dad, I said, one of the most remarkable things being in Mexico is, a lot of people down there are living in what we consider poverty, But no one has their hand out down there. Like no one's asking or begging for money. They're all trying to do something to make money. And there's a difference in like a work ethic. So an example, if you go to the grocery store and you go inside, there's guys in the parking lot that have folded up cardboard boxes, and they put them on your windshield to shield it from the sun so that your car doesn't get overheated, and that's their hustle all day. And when you come out and they take it off, you give them a little bit of change, but they came up with something to add some value. They weren't sitting out there and help me on that cardboard sign. They were trying to do something I would pass this mother and her 2 kids, young kids, every day on Fifth Avenue, to be out there singing, and singing. And were they wonderful singers? No. However, it was beautiful. It was
There was
beautiful
a
to see
choice.
the family trying to do something to make some extra change,
Yeah.
and so there was a spirit there of working for the money as opposed to, having their hand out to beg for it. And that really struck me. And also, as you said, like, how happy a lot of these people that I met were, despite what we would consider them not having anything. You know,
Right.
my buddy would tell me stories. I never actually went there, but he would go visit the honey shaman, and the honey shaman, like, that's what he did. He had bees, and he did the sacred honey they would do
Oh, wow.
ceremonies with. And he said basically this guy he lived in like a dirt hut. But the first time my buddy Jason went to go visit him, he was like so proud to like bring him in and show him where he lived and meet his family. And so this guy was like one of the happiest guys he's ever met. And he's living, in these conditions that a lot of us couldn't fathom. But I think it goes to show that, a lot of us are raised in a culture and an environment where the message that we're hammered over our head with every day is to consume more. It's not enough. You need a bigger house. You need a newer car. You need another pair of shoes. You need, right? And that keeps us on this, consumer slave hamster wheel that keeps this whole thing turning. Because if we ever got content with what we had, well, consumerism would die, right?
Yeah.
If we had, one car for 30 years and we're happy with it and took care of it, well, they wouldn't sell us 3 other cars. If we were happy with the one house and lived in it for 40 years, right? So it's something that it's part of the environment that we've been raised in, is to never be happy with what we have. And the problem with that is, no matter how big the house gets, no matter how nice the car is, no matter how many pairs of shoes you have, people realize when they think they should be happy now, they're still not happy, because they've been conditioned to never be happy, to never appreciate the shit that really matters. And to your point, right? Appreciate the little things that at the end of the day, when the game of Monopoly is over and you've collected all the properties and the game's over, it all goes back in the box.
Yeah. What do you really have? Yeah.
You don't take it with you. It goes back in the box, and somebody else plays the game all over with the same tools and the same toys. So, yeah.
I would like to share a Mexico story with you.
All right.
My brother, when he was in college, he used to do that Habitat for Humanity stuff where he would build houses for poor people. And, they would bring snacks for the kids in the village. And they gave this little girl some popcorn, and she was just blown away. And she was just ridiculously happy.
Yeah.
And the first thing she did was she asked any of the students that were building houses if they wanted some popcorn. And then, like, she doesn't have shit.
Right.
The first instinct is to share.
And,
yeah. And I don't know. I get teary when I think about that.
Yeah.
But I wish we were more communal like that. Particularly in America, there's this whole thing with individualism.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish we had a more communal culture, like in South America and a lot of Asian countries. I don't know. I just wanted to share that with you.
No, man, it's a great story, and yeah, it's very symbolic of the difference of mindset. Depending on where you grow up and what the message is. And I love America, but there's some things about the culture here and what we're programmed and conditioned to feel like success looks like, what it is. Behaviors that are acceptable, not acceptable. I said, wouldn't it be great to live in a world where, if a guy had enough money to effectively cure world hunger, but instead he decided to try to fly to the moon, that guy would just be ostracized and just like ridiculed to no end. But instead, we revere these people, right? Or a guy like Bill Gates, who's a philanthropist, because some of the pocket change that he steals from people, he gives back to causes that also probably help him in some way or another, right? So it's like we don't like culturally, like we put on a pedestal these people that don't have that type of mindset, right? And it shows. And Jose Sanchez, your fuck Monopoly. I'm trying to be the winner in the game of life. And what I'm saying, Jose, is the game of life is Monopoly, bro. It is Monopoly. But at the end of the day, you can collect everything you want, but it's going to go back in the box at the end, and you don't take it with you. So, yes, try to be successful and make sure you can provide for you and your family, but also understand that none of that shit you take with you. So the moments, the connections, the memories, those are the things that really are going to be most meaningful when you're on your deathbed.
Totally agree. Now, we have not talked about wrestling for 45 minutes. We have not.
Thank God.
But I will get in trouble if I don't ask about some of your upcoming shows. You have some NWA stuff coming up. And you're doing stuff with CYN, Control Your Narrative. I'd love to hear all about it.
Yeah, well, actually, the 19th, funny enough, I'm heading back down to Mexico for wrestling for the first time in a number of years for X-Law. Dr. Wagner Jr. and El Macias in a three-way. That's on the 19th. And then, the 20th and 21st, I'll be in Nashville for the Crockett Cup. We've got the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship Finals. It's a four-way, I believe. So let Scott Steiner figure out the math of what my percentages of winning, but I think they're pretty decent. And that's for me, after taking some time off and reevaluating things, and coming to the realization that I still enjoy a lot of professional wrestling, especially the performing part. There's a lot of the stuff that I don't enjoy. Right, I think that the community and the culture can be a little toxic at times, but I think that you probably find that in a lot of different, areas. But for me, the NWA was a place that I really had interest in going and performing because, I grew up watching the NWA. That was, for me, that's pro wrestling. It always will be. It was my earliest memories of it. And so, to have an opportunity to come in there and do some stuff was cool. And so, we'll see how long that run lasts. Obviously, if I win the championship, they'll have to use me. So, we're going to go for that. But I'm excited for the Crockett Cup and for that match. And then, what's that?
Is Ricky Morton in that one?
I just wrestled Ricky Morton. Yeah, I think that match just aired this past weekend. I got to wrestle Ricky Morton, which was pretty amazing. I'm not going to lie. He's 65, so as I feel like I'm getting towards the end of my physical window to do this, and I look at this guy who's 65, and I'm going, well, maybe not. But we'll see. I don't know if I've got that much left in me. He's amazing, and obviously someone I grew up watching, and so to get in there with him was a real treat.
And he still has the same hair as he did. He has the same hair that he had like 30, 40 years ago.
Not gonna lie, it was like wrestling my mom, because she's kind of got the same haircut, same color and cut. That's what she actually told me. That she's like, I watched the match. Like I was like wrestling my mom, same haircut and everything. That's like, all right.
I respect guys that like Ricky Morton and Rod Stewart who can have the same hairstyle for decades.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, man. I said like Ric Flair, and Dusty, like they were really thinking ahead, because if I start bleaching my hair now in my 30s, like when I'm in my 60s, it's gonna look exactly the same. Like it's never gonna change. For me now, I'm sitting here going like, I gotta color. If I'm gonna color this thing in, I'm gonna start looking old. These guys are bleaching it. I was like, man, I should have started bleaching my hair blonde like 10 years ago, and it'd be no problem, right? So
our pal Toke says that Sting is splashing through tables. Aries can keep going too.
Yeah, well, Sting picked a better gimmick than I did. My gimmick's overall being a really good wrestler. That's a harder and harder gimmick to uphold as you get older. Being super crisp and athletic and explosive in the ring.
Right.
At a certain part. Hey, oh no, my mom's on here watching. I think she says I resent that remark, but
oops. Yes, she did. I did not coax that out of him.
Love you, Mom.
Mrs. Bartman. Sorry.
Hey, Ma, you hit me much harder than Ricky Morton ever did. When I back talk you. So.
But did you sell? Did you sell for your mom?
Also prepared me for the ring. So.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the controlling narrative stuff,
Yeah.
I got announced for that, and Twitter got whipped up in a frenzy, and it was trending 4 times the last week under arts and culture. I'm now either Mr. Arts and Culture Austin Aries or the cultured artist Austin Aries. I'm not even sure which one I'm going to be yet. Very interesting to not be on active television and figure there's thousands of guys and girls that are on TV that they could be talking about, but there's a certain sect on Twitter that wants to talk about me, and even if it's not in the most flattering of terms, we'll take the publicity and we'll go from there. As they say, rent free, right? So,
Can we talk about some of the entrance music you've used over the years? Obviously, Weezer, the greatest man that ever lived.
Yeah.
I remember I used to use Depeche Mode's "Personal Jesus."
Actually, Marilyn Manson version, yeah.
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 That was the Manson version. Sorry.
And that was Gabe Sapolsky's. Gabe Sapolsky picked that for me. So
I thought it worked. I thought it worked great for you.
Hey, it's like, I wasn't going to argue with him. So I didn't have anything better.
Did you have a favorite song that you like to come out to?
If I picked one, like I think the Weezer song is probably my favorite. I think it's a great pro wrestling entrance theme. If you really listen to that first 45 seconds or whatever, and that's where I came up with the greatest man that ever lived, was just straight from that song. That was the whole thing behind it. So even just the attitude of it, if you listen to the lyrics, it's very fitting. So, obviously with copyright and things like that, it wasn't something I could use once on television. So I've had a bunch of different songs over the years, but I think that's probably the one that I enjoyed the best. Yeah, for sure.
We were talking about how you wrestled Ricky Morton recently. I remembered one of the shows I saw you in LA, you wrestled Jushin Liger. You've gotten in the ring with many legends. Is there anyone out there that you still want to wrestle with?
What's that?
Yeah. Is there anyone out there that you want to wrestle still, or are you content with what you've done?
I mean, I'm content with what I've done. If there was one guy, the name that always comes up is Chris Jericho, a guy who's, as I was watching wrestling, either before I got into it or early in my career, he was one of those guys that was a junior heavyweight that stood out to me, and then to see what he's gone to do in his career, and then and outside wrestling too. Really respect everything he's done, following his dream of being a musician and making that work. So yeah, I mean that's a matchup that if it comes down the road would be one that would really be appealing to me. And he's still performing at a high level, and I've still got plenty left in my tank. So who knows? Down the road, if we happen to be in the same place at the same time, whether it would be wrestling against them or teaming with them, I think that's something that that would be a name that definitely would appeal to me. Outside of that, I've been very fortunate to wrestle, a lot of guys, I consider legends. Again, I wrestled Sting back in Impact Wrestling. And that was a fun match. I've wrestled Kurt Angle. I've been there obviously with Jeff Hardy many times. So yeah, I'm pretty content with where I'm at. And now I realize I'm the guy that a lot of these younger guys are looking at, and they want to wrestle, and they're, I remember watching you when I was in grade school, and I'm like, let's not say that out loud, right?
How about the younger kids? Are there any of them that have caught your eye that you'd like to work with?
Oh man, can I be completely honest with you, Raymond?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't watch a lot of wrestling. I just don't. Up until in Mexico, I didn't have cable TV. I didn't really watch much TV. I like to feel like I stay informed with what's going on, but I think that I lost that kind of fandom some years back. A lot of the wrestling that's out there now doesn't really appeal to me, I hate to say. That's why the CYN stuff to me is interesting. That's why the NWA stuff is interesting. Stylistically, it's maybe stuff that's more geared towards my personal taste in wrestling. You know, I know there's a lot of great talents out there, a lot of guys, you know, young guys. And it's funny because like some of the guys I would mention aren't even necessarily young guys, but just guys that had a chance to wrestle, like a Josh Alexander or Jonathan Gresham, or you know, some of these guys, or you know, even guys like Sammy Guevara,
Right.
right. So I mean, there's a lot of talent out there right now. But yeah, it's hard to keep up, man, because it's like I used to feel like I kind of knew everybody that was in the industry to some extent, and it just seems like it's exploded so much. And as I get older, there's just a lot of talent now that I don't know and I'm not aware of. But and then there's there's a lot of places to work now, so there's constantly guys popping up, and so but it's exciting for me, and it creates a lot of potential fresh matchups, and again. I can continue to learn, even being 22 years in, wrestling some younger guys that have a little different influence, or their vision of what pro wrestling is a little different than what mine is. That's good to test myself, and I can pass on some of my knowledge, but I can also learn from them and kind of this new wave of pro wrestling.
I want to get back to one viewer question that we couldn't get to before.
Yeah.
What's a good smoothie recipe to start the morning?
Oh man. So I think like my base of my smoothie is usually always like 1 or 2 bananas, maybe like a half cup of oats, some frozen berries like blueberries, and maybe if you want to put some greens in there, you could do like some like frozen spinach or kale. And then I just use water because it's cost effective. You don't need to use any type of milk. So that's kind of like my base. Now from there you can build your flavors on that, right? So maybe one day I'll use a chocolate protein powder, or you could use just cocoa, to give the chocolate flavor, and then maybe some peanut butter. So you got like a peanut butter chocolate banana smoothie, Other days I might use like a vanilla, maybe I'll use vanilla and cinnamon, and then it's, it gives it a different flavor profile. One good one is instead of using bananas, you can use oats. I like hemp seeds too for my protein, and put some whole hemp seeds in there. But I'll use a couple of oranges and then vanilla protein powder. That like the orange creamsicle smoothie. Taste orange creamsicles back in your kid with the vanilla ice cream in the middle. Yeah, so you do oranges, a little bit of cinnamon, and then some vanilla protein powder, and that gives you like an orange creamsicle flavor. So it's about what flavors you like. Sometimes if I use like, instead of blueberries, if I use like strawberries or raspberries as my frozen fruit with peanut butter, it's almost like a peanut butter and jelly smoothie.
The guy who asked the question is Mexican, so I'm going to assume he's going to just load it up with cinnamon. Am I going to get canceled for saying that?
Nope, I don't think so. Because you're Mexican.
Canelo.
You're Mexican, so it's okay, right?
I am not Mexican.
Wait, am I going to get canceled for that? Oh, we all look the same, right?
Okay, we have another question from Jose from Electric Playground, real star of Electric Playground. If there was anyone from the past you wish you could have wrestled, who would it be?
Man, I'm going to narrow it down to 2.5. Well, I'm going to say 3. Eddie Guerrero, Ric Flair, and I want Bobby Heenan as my manager.
Oh,
gotta have, as long as Heenan's my manager, I'm happy. But like Bobby Heenan's probably like my favorite wrestling personality of all time. I think he was very underrated, and so yeah.
Underrated. I thought he was. Who underrates him? I think he's the best commentator ever.
But I don't think people even, when people talk about greatest managers of all time, I don't know what like, to me, like he's head and shoulders above anybody, but a lot of people will say, Paul Heyman is, which I love Paul Heyman. But for me, what separated Heenan from Paul Heyman is Heenan could take a bump when the time was right. Heenan was actually a really good worker before he was a wrestler. He knew how to bump. He had timing. He could have at any night made it about him and put the spotlight on him, and he always knew how to not do that, because he had a presence to him that if he wasn't careful, he would have easily overshadowed a lot of his guys. But you think in my era that I grew up watching, The feud was Hogan versus Heenan. And
Right.
Heenan just brought these guys into the family, and then the minute they're in the family, they were contenders versus Hogan, whether it was Stud, Orndorff, Andre. Once they got in the Heenan family, they were elevated. And I mean, that's to me like the art of a manager. And I don't know that we really have that much outside of Heyman these days. That there's not managers. And so, as I look at, maybe the second half of my wrestling career, like once the in-ring days are done, I'd love to be able to transition and be a modern day Bobby Heenan, or even a third of as good as Bobby Heenan. But I think that I bring a lot of similar characteristics. Obviously, like I think I'll still be able to bump for a while. I think I proved myself on commentary in my opportunity
I
there.
loved you on commentary. I thought you were great on WWE commentary.
And also like that, and also that's a place where being a bit undersized for the business actually doesn't hurt me. It actually helps enhance the guys I would be with, right? I'm not towering over the guys I'm managing, so it's something that, I hope that wrestling continues to utilize that as a tool, as a character in the play, because I think when it's done right, as again, guys like Heenan have showed, guys like Heyman have showed, even Jim Cornette, even though he just shit talks me all the time. By the way, I had turnips for dinner tonight, Jim, just in case you're wondering. They were delicious. It's shown that it can draw money, and if you take Jim Cornette away from Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, for as good as they were, I don't know if they were elevated to that level, and
definitely not. Definitely not.
I think there's something to it, and we've gotten away from it. But I think that done right, and I think there's some guys right now that are doing it. I don't want to take away from the guys that are currently doing it, but it's something I definitely have interest in. Is once my in-ring days are over, to maybe be to be in that role would be fun.
We have a paper question.
Okay.
Actually, I just made that up.
You getting faxes in there? You getting fax questions in there?
Fax machine from the bat line. Do you have any plans to do any FSW shows? Would love to see you out here in Vegas again, man. And
I'd love to. It's just always comes down to the business aspect of things, whether it's me getting out there, the travel costs, or then again what their budget looks like. And I've worked with Joe over the years, and
I like the DeFalcos. They've always been nice to me.
Yeah, no, get along. And props to them for having FSW running as long as it has. So yeah, I'd love to get out there and do something. Just comes down to not the dollars and cents and the scheduling and all those things. But yeah, I always that's a place I'd always go and work if it made sense. Those guys have always been good to me, and I think that they do a good thing out there. And I'm happy to see that they're still drawing good, and got through the shutdown that the whole world had to go through, and they're back up and running shows.
And for the people out there who might not know FSW, that is Future Stars of Wrestling. They're a local Vegas indie promotion. Highly recommend them. Look them up.
Guys like
Aries there. Killer Cross is there.
Chris Bay kind of broke out of there.
We always see Kazarni every now and then. He's out here.
And Kazarni, yeah. I think he's on a show. I think he's on a show out here in Florida here that I'll be on here next month. So,
Willie Max is high. I saw him at the Nerd like a month ago or something.
The Nerd's still up and running. I'll have to take a trip in there when I come back to Vegas. Got some unfinished business in the Nerd.
Let's get you out of here on one last question from Sam.
Okay.
If you were a manager, who would be in your stable?
Who would be, if I was a manager, who would be in my stable?
So you need the star, you need the heater.
Well, should I just name all the champions? Just say Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, Adam Page, and Moose. Because if I'm the manager, of course all my guys are the champs. No, man, that's a good question. Shit, I don't know. How about EC3, Adam Scherr, and Killer Cross?
That's a good one. Let's try to get a lady in there out of the women wrestlers. I think you need one these days.
A lady wrestler. Who would I put in my stable? Tough one. Put me on the spot.
Personally, I would go with Rain. I always thought she was a hottie.
Yeah, I think she's kind of transitioned on into motherhood now. So I don't know that
That's a gimmick. There could be the MILF wrestler.
Oh man. MAW MILF All-Star Wrestling. It's just you gotta have a kid or whatever. I don't know who would I put in there as my wrestler. Okay, I'll go with Masha Slamovich, just because I did a couple shows with her and she's starting to break out and kind of enjoyed her shtick. And I'm honestly like not super familiar with a lot of newer wrestlers.
Right.
So yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, you stumped me on that one.
Sorry, that's my fault.
So
that's not Sam's fault. Sam's still a good guy.
No, it's all good.
Now, if you want to keep up with Austin Aries, find out where his upcoming shows with, get his thoughts on life, see hopefully more awesome beach pictures from Mexico. Follow him on Instagram at Austin Healy Aries.
Yes, sir.
The RPadTV Patreon is up and running. If you want to see more interviews with more excellent people like Austin Aries, go to my Patreon. You can support me starting at $3 a month. And if you can't do that, please follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, all that good stuff. Like and subscribe. Austin Aries, awesome hanging out with you. I can't wait to see you in real life. And hopefully that is sooner rather than later.
I might be out there in the next couple of months. I got some, I still got a storage unit out there full of stuff. I need to grab some boxes of books. So I'll let you know. If I get out that way. Yeah. If you want to buy my book, Food Fight. Yeah, still get copies at my Pro Wrestling Tees store. So just go to prowrestlingtees.com and look me up and you'll see all the goodies there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching RPadTV 3000 with my very special guest, Austin Aries. Catch you next week.